Hey adventurers, so today's going to be another book review. This is for Calculated by Nova McBee. Of course, I have already reviewed books 2 and 3 of this series, but on my first read through I didn't review book 1, and then it got too long away from it for me to actually review it properly, and so I waited and decided not to do it at that time. Now that I've reread the book, I decided to film this review. That's what I'm trying to say. So, Calculated by Nova McBee. This is the first book in the Calculated series by Nova McBee, as I've already mentioned several times now. It's a sci-fi, but it's not, and I'll get more into this in a second here, but it's not just like it's not necessarily what you think of when you think of sci-fi. It's more of a modern or a contemporary novel, adventure novel. So it's adventure, it's a thriller as well. Thriller is kind of the best word to describe them. They definitely are YA, but not in the bad way that YA often has the stigma against it where it's young and what's the word I'm trying to think of? Immature. It's not immature in that way. Before we continue on though with the review, I'll just quickly like to say that if you like what you're seeing from an Erudite adventure, we'd really appreciate it if you would like and subscribe and comment down below if you haven't already. So, Calculated, as I already mentioned, is the first book in the Calculated series by Nova McBee. This is actually my second read-through of the book, but I didn't do a review of it when I first read it, even though I did reviews of books 2 and 3 already on the channel. So upon rereading, I decided to actually do a review, as I already mentioned all of that stuff. This is a very different type of sci-fi book. It isn't futuristic or superpowered or space or anything like that. Not even really big ideas sci-fi that we get that mixes with so many of those other styles, types. It's just a book set in modern times with some science elements that are clearly fictitious. But while clearly fictitious, they also seem well within the realm of possibility. On my first read through, I wasn't really sold on the book. I thought it was okay, but not really my favorite by any means. What I did know instantly after I finished this book though, was that I loved the world being created, and that I knew at that time that I would read the second book to see if I wanted to continue on with the series at that time. But I knew that I would at least read the second book. And depending on how I felt after I finished book 2, I would decide if I would continue on to book 3. So upon rereading though, my opinion has changed quite a bit on this book. I already knew that I loved where the series was going, and especially book 3, I absolutely loved book 3. So I knew that it would be worth me rereading book 1 so that I could reread books 2 and 3 as well in preparation for book 4. But what I wasn't expecting was just how much more I would enjoy and appreciate book 1. There's so much foreshadowing and setup for later books in the series that I just completely missed on my first read through because you don't know to look for it. The story also felt much tighter and better written because I understood how it was supposed to work and why certain choices were being made. There are flashbacks in this book and I was a bit confused by them the first time I read them, but the second time they made way more sense and worked really, really well in my opinion. All of this is to say that upon reread, what was like a 3, maybe a 3.5 star book went up to probably a 4.5 easily. So our main characters feel very real. The villains are scary, the world and setting are very well described and set up, but to me the thing that still stands out the most with this book and the series as a whole is how mathematics are incorporated into this world, and it doesn't feel like you're being taught something, being schooled for math or whatever. It doesn't feel like you're taking a math class. They're just a part of the world and you realize how cool math is through it. Thankfully, I was in school, I did fairly good at maths, and so I'm able to not only understand what's going on and what's happening within the story, but I can grasp it in a way, and because of that I just love it so much more because I see what they're doing and why they're doing it, and it's just cool. It's definitely not it doesn't like play with hard mathematical concepts to understand or anything like that. It's fairly easy to understand, and it elevates the story and characters in a way that I've rarely seen done. If this book were fantasy and not sci-fi, or not just modern or literary fiction or whatever you want to call it, if it was fantasy, I'd treat the way they use math in this series as a magic system. But it never feels outlandish or fake or unbelievable or anything like that. You can absolutely believe that this character has these abilities that she has, and that's one of the coolest things about it, is you completely buy everything that's going on in this series. I could continue talking about this book for a while, but I just wanted to comment on one last thing, which is how Nova McBee is able to use this story as a retelling. It's very subtle if you don't already know to look for it, but as soon as you find out that it's there and that is what she is doing, you see it and you cannot unsee it. It's so clear, so obvious. It permeates every bit of the story, but never once detracts from it. And I know a lot of times you'll get retellings that are great, but they feel like retellings of the story. This, if you didn't know that it wasn't there, it wouldn't even feel like a retelling. It just feels so natural. And I'm not going to tell you what that retelling is. That's something that people should find out for themselves as they read through it, but it's really cool the way that it's done. I'm so glad that I was able to reread and through that rereading, reappreciate this book, because it's so much better than I initially thought. I guess I should also mention that I don't love the narration for this book. I both times I've read this book now, I've listened to the audiobook, and it's not bad. The audiobook's not bad. The narrator fits the character and story very, very well, but I just feel like the narrator didn't quite understand what she was doing with this book until towards the end of book 1. But book 2 and book 3 are just way better. The narration of them is just way better. And that's personal opinion. Maybe other people think differently, but I personally don't love the narration in book 1. Books 2 and 3 are way better. And even towards the end of book 1 is way better. So that is just, those are my thoughts on Calculated by Nova McBee. Kind of scatterbrained a little bit, kind of tripping over my own tongue in lots of places here. But I do really enjoy this series, and I really appreciate book 1 significantly more than I did previously, and that's always a good thing for me, is when I can realize, nope, my initial opinion was wrong on this book. It's way better than I thought, or than I remembered. So thank you guys for watching an Erudite Adventure. We post videos every Monday and Thursday, and have our social medias linked in the description down below. We'll see you guys again soon. Stay warm.